MacKenzie here. Today we're going to talk about the color yellow and how you can create forms without them looking dirty. So let's get started. So let's look at yellow. The yellows that I have on my palette are Cadmium Lemon Light, which is the lightest yellow. Then I have a Cadmium Yellow Medium, and then finally a Naples Yellow. And Naples Yellow is considerably darker than the other two, darker and duller. But we're not going to talk about brightness and dullness. We'll save that for another day. I also use Aurelian as both a yellow and a green. So I'll put that over on the left-hand side. And that is a transparent color. You're not going to get much information from the value finder looking for yellows. You really have to use your eye. So lots of times I'll have a plan in my head. Now this is just a value plan, meaning that the light side of the form is going to be those light yellows and the dark side is never going to get darker than burnt sienna. That's my plan. Now that's not about color, that's just about value, how light or dark something is. So I have some lemons for reference. And indeed, even though the lemon is all yellow, I mean, it is a yellow form, there aren't any other colors on it. In order for the eye to see it as a form, it has to be able to read lights, darks, and mediums. And so I have to represent those. And my goal is not to have the fruit look bruised or dirty. I also want to preface this by saying yellow for me is the hardest color to paint with exactly because it is really hard to determine value. And sometimes in order to tip the color into the value I want, I'll use the complementary color. I'll use some purple or some reddish, not red, dark reddish tones, and things get muddy right away. And I don't want things to get muddy. All right, so here's Cadmium Lemon Light, followed by Cadmium Yellow Medium going in as the midtone. I mixed a little bit of red into that to make it an orange, and you can see already it's turning into a rounded form. But it's not looking bruised, and the eye is still seeing everything as being yellow. Now there's the burnt sienna going in. Remember, I said I was not going to put anything on the form of the yellow thing, which is a lemon, that was darker than burnt sienna. Now here's an example where I do go darker, and I think things start to look either bruised or damaged in some way. There's the light yellows going in on the top, and then right into a burnt sienna, and then a darker red or purple, almost not purple, but a reddish that has some blue in it. And although that you can see the strength of that form, which I really like, it starts to look a little bruised to me. It looks a little damaged. So let's do another form. Next one will be a pear. And again, I'm gonna do the same thing. Nothing like repetition. So this is a yellow pear. It could be a banana, it could be a daffodil, it could be anything that's yellow that I want to show that there's a form, that there's and there might be lots of forms like this. This could be just one petal among many petals on a rose, for example. But I want it to read as being yellow, not as looking bruised or brown or muddy. You know, muddy and dull is the last place I want to go to. So I make those value shifts very small from one to the other. The minute I start making those value shifts really broad, you'll see that things start to leave yellow and go into what I would call a territory that is, although colorful and bright, not yellow anymore. Because if you walked out of the room and came back in, you would very quickly see that the forms on the left are yellow forms and the forms on the right are yellow? I'm not sure anymore. But it all depends on what you want to do with your paintings. I just ran into a place where, for me, my paintings of yellow things were coming out looking very dull and muddy. And I discovered over a period of time that the reason of that for me was that I was making those shifts in value as strong as I would in any other painting. And that was a mistake. If I'm going to paint something that's yellow, then I have to stay in a lighter value range overall. That's just kind of a rule I have in my head. And that dab of burnt sienna up at the top of the square there reminds me of that. It's not there because it's burnt sienna. It's there to remind me that that's as dark as I will allow myself to go. And a value scale. All right, I had the value scale out, but I went down a road I didn't want to go down. So here we are again with a yellow form. starting with the cadmiums on the far left and moving into purple where it's dark, showing, again, massing for value, mixing for color. Here's a high key rose. Nothing is going to be lower than a value of 5 on this rose, but you can still see forms. It's a way that you can still delineate forms without having to go all the way into darks. And here's another yellow rose, and I'm using complementary colors in the background in order to make those yellows pop. It's almost a little bit abstract. Here's a yellow rose coming up, which has quite a bit of reds and oranges in it, and ultimately, again, complementary color in the back, again, to make that yellow read as more yellow. This really takes advantage of the complementary color of purple and alizarin crimson in order to make the daffodils in that yellow really pop, and again with the popcorn as well. The popcorn is fun to paint. So be aware of that. I mean, I want to have a strong value range in my paintings, but for me, it can't happen in the yellow form. If it happens in the yellow form, then my forms end up looking dirty or damaged in some way. I have to be really sensitive with the yellows and then put in my complements in the back. Now, we're going to talk about shiny things and gold things, and that's what this is an example of. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about yellows, not shiny. Shiny and gold are different than yellow. And we'll be talking about brightness and dullness and all of that. I mean, it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color. Please join my YouTube channel. Let me know what yellows you use, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.